Guys, please welcome the last Dragon Star Taimak.
What's up, everybody?
How you doing?
What's up? Sacramento! Got my guitar for you. No, just. That's awesome. Right.
Cool. So, Last Dragon, man, it's an awesome film for so many reasons, and the biggest one that definitely comes through on all that is your love for that
woman.
Genre.
No, I'm just kidding.
But the kung fu movies are like, obviously Last Dragon is your guys' take, homage, whatever you prefer, to those. How old were you when you first saw your first one?
The first martial arts film?
Yeah.
God. Well, back in those days, there was a really horrible area of Manhattan in Times Square called 42nd Street, which I got the HBO show Deuce and everything. So when I was a kid, we lived in, my father and mother, they split, and my father had us, me and my brother, my sisters, two sisters were living with my mother, and we were living in a hotel.
Yeah.
And that was right there in Times Square. So after school, I would cruise around. My father was like, back in those days when you're like 13, now they're more, protective of the kids, but then he'd let us go anywhere, which wasn't, I don't know if it was too smart. But anyway, I ended up on 42nd Street because they had porn movies and they had kung fu movies. And of course I wasn't, So I would go on the kung fu movies, and I was martial artist. I was doing martial arts. And that's where, I guess, I was 13, so that's where I was able to see all these kung fu movies. But when I was living in Europe when I was a kid, from like on and off from 7 to 13, more on between like 9 to 13, 14.
Right. And
I saw a commercial, and back in those days, it's very different now for young people, but back in those days, they were real restricted the amount of violence they showed. So when Bruce Lee was about to do something really crazy, they would cut away.
Oh, right.
Like break a neck or something. It's all. But anyway, that was the time frame when I saw martial arts films.
Did you? Because I know you do have actual background. Mm-hmm. Was that at a younger age than you seeing someone like Bruce Lee do that cinematically?
Well, like I said, I started when I was young. I was 6 years old. My father was picked on a lot as a kid, so he wanted me and my brother to study martial arts. So we still got into problems, but he wanted us to be able to defend ourselves. So it stuck more with me than it was with my brother. Mm-hmm. So I was doing it for a lot of years before The Last Dragon.
When you got the opportunity to make Last Dragon, talk about how that got to you, because that's not a first opportunity, actors that we've interviewed this weekend versus just overall, it's kind of like you have that, I started as a guy in the background, and then I was this character, and then I'm the lead.
Well, I never studied acting before. I was just doing martial arts, and I was a big fan of martial arts films.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's literally like, how old are you guys? They came to my time. You're 21. You're 18. Yeah. So around that age, I was like a fanatic. So just imagine they're a fanatic of music, or I don't know what you guys are into, but Justin Bieber, right?
Right.
They're like, and Beyonce and all this, and they were just dancing and singing in their apartment, and they would go to classes and all of that, and then all of a sudden this new movie audition happens, and it was like a big deal because let's say Jay-Z is like producing this huge thing and they're looking for a star. That's what it was like, Yeah. I was like one of those kids that were like doing martial arts and never pursued any performing in a movie, and they were making this big movie, and I was at a karate tournament and I was competing, and they said, "Hey man, you should go up on this. I think there's a role, the lead." And I was like, "I don't know anything about acting," and they were like, "No, you got to go, So I thought I was going to do a martial arts, like a performance or something like that. But they sent me into a building, and there was an office, little office, and there were actors outside with paper like this, and I was like, this is kind of weird, because they were with the paper, and I said, oh no, they're professional actors. And then when I went inside, they had me with the paper, and it was part of the script, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I kind of, the guy said, you ready? And I said, yeah. I was like, I was faking it because I didn't want to say no because I was there.
Right.
And I did terrible. It was a cold reading, and I didn't understand the character. I didn't know what the hell. So anyway, long story short, I was really, had my hopes up, but I didn't do well. And he immediately had me leave. And I was with my father and my best friend, and I was acting like sour about the whole thing.
Yeah.
It was like I got my hopes up so much about it.
Right.
Anyway, my father told me to call, at the time, best friend's Richie, and he was he was selling these clothing and things for women, and he said, we're gonna go to my friend's store in Miami. And at that time in Manhattan, guys used to love to go to Miami, like for spring break or things like that, because the girls were all there.
Yeah.
So me and my friend were like, yeah, let's go to Miami. So we were like 19, and my father was driving. And my friend was sitting in the middle, and I was here. My father's Italian, my mother's black, but my father was like this tough Italian guy, and he was, I was sitting there, and he said, stop being such a whining, you should have done better in the role. What's your problem? Take it out. So he told me to take the paper out to practice the scene with him. And I didn't want to because I knew he was going to be heavy-handed about it.
Yeah.
So my friend was just like this in the middle, like, oh, God, family. And anyway, I would try to do it. He said, no, stupid, do it like this. He would literally whack me on the ride over to Florida. So by the time we got to Florida, he said, okay, take the stuff out back and go inside the house. And I got out the car, and I told my friend, I said, I don't want to do this role. I don't care about it anymore.
Right.
I just don't want him to bug me. And he said, look, if there's a God on earth, that role was written for you. And we ended up, he had us cleaning roofs to make some money and stuff with the spray. So we were goofing around cleaning roofs a lot in the daytime and doing the lines and goofing around. And about a month or two went by, and we went back to New York, and I felt I had nothing to lose, so I went back to the office. I knocked on the door and asked if I could do it again, and he was like giving me no attention. But as I was reading, he could tell that I picked up on it, and he stopped doing what he's doing because he was really not paying me attention when I was reading. He was just let him do his thing, get the hell out of here. And then he realized I did well, and he called up. He had me stop, and he called up the production office and asked me to go to the production office and read for them, and that's when they already hired somebody, but they didn't sign a contract. So they fired the guy and they hired me.
Wow, what a story.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of...
I was born the year of the dragon, by the way. Maybe that's something.
Yeah.
It was destiny.
No, it really, that kind of a story, it really was, man. That.
Yeah. I mean, I was always passionate. I was always a passionate person, and it's one of those things that, it's like I said, if they were like super fans as kids,
right.
What do they have to lose? You go to school, you do homework, argue with your family, and then
do that, right? Yeah.
Hopefully not.
That film is filled with so many homages or tropes to not just the Bruce Lee movies, but just the movies of that era, with like the whole TV retro show When You Fall in Love with Her, and the wise talking little brother going around and everything. And did you guys, when you're filming that on the street and you're going down in full Bruce Lee garb, or, like, I know, I can imagine that, they're blocking parts off for parts of the filming or whatever, but are you just getting like looks as you?
Well, yeah, I mean, New York at that time now it's a, low crime. Back then it was like a wild west, and it was like artists were like, and you could, now to stay in Manhattan, the rents are anywhere from $2,500 and up a month. Back then you can get a one bedroom for $600. So, anybody was there, So, and martial artists, some of them were out of their mind,
Yeah.
Like they were like, they would dress up and they would have their black belt wrapped around their gi and walk around, like tough,
mugging everybody.
you mess with me,
Yeah.
maybe not, maybe here's a machete, it was retarded. So to see a guy in a kung fu uniform wasn't like the most outrageous thing. It was just like, okay, he's another freak.
Yeah.
So they had shot me in Chinatown in the
Get up,
outfit
yeah.
in Chinatown, and I was a little embarrassed, because I never would dress like that.
Yeah.
And because they wanted, the scenes where I was walking through Chinatown to ask them where the master was, I literally went and did that. And they're like, oh, what the hell is he talking about? They're all that way,
Yeah.
So, get the hell out of here, I got to sell the fish.
All those people that you're asking, they don't understand?
Well, they weren't even actors. They had the camera like that, but they had it up on a truck over there.
Yeah.
And they said, just walk and ask them which way that is, and they just walk over there and ask them. So
It's like the first prank.
they had me go up to a guy, where's this, and he was a guy, he wasn't an actor. He said, oh yeah, just go down that block, and I said, okay. And he didn't look at me how I was dressed. If you see that scene, there was a guy,
Yeah.
they didn't look at what I was dressed. They were just telling me, yeah. That just shows you that they didn't care what I was dressed like.
No, yeah, the scenes of you walking around, they, like you just said, they're that long zoom of the cityscape, like broad walkway, crowded, but man, you sure stick out with that hat.
That's what I thought. It's like someone Comic-Con, They didn't have Comic-Cons back then. So.
Yeah. The different characters are such a lot of fun. What was your favorite? Was it the fight scenes with Shogun, or the class where you're
all of it? It was like it's like the whole thing. Especially when you're young and you come from looking at kung fu movies and reading comic books, and you're in that world. It felt like you were walking into a comic book.
Yeah.
And you were like the lead, and then there's the beautiful woman, and,
Right.
and and then the showing up. So it was fun, but at the same time, everybody was really passionate because it was like a big deal to be in the movie, and everybody wanted to do a good job. So everybody was really focused on whatever, as silly as the characters were, they were really focused on those characters. It's like the famous producer, comedian, director Mel Brooks. He says acting is he said comedy is a very serious business.
Yeah.
So you're acting silly, but to get to the point where you can really do a project that is making people like laugh hard.
Yeah.
You do a lot of work to get it, like
to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And then on top of that, you guys have all the fight choreography.
Yeah, they didn't want me to focus because they already knew I was a trained martial artist, so they had me focus on just being able to get through some of the acting scenes because I never did that before. So
When you guys, I'm curious that, like, Rio and Shona, when you guys are close quarters and you're back and forth, is it like a 30%, 50%, 70% full go type of a thing?
Yeah, that because being a fighter and all that wasn't at all a problem because you know where things are coming from. You're not
Right.
because you get used to guys throwing kicks and punches in your face. So, but basically, it's about the pacing because and the consistency. Because if you're doing a fight scene with someone and they're going like 50%, they say, okay, in action, they're going crazy. And instead of the punch coming straight, they're throwing it like that. It changes everything. So it's really about practicing and being consistent.
What was your favorite part, non-fighting part to do?
Well, that would be with the girl.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, well, we went on a couple of dates where we had butt heads during the middle of the shoot because she was older than me, and you guys know how it's like you're like maybe 16 and someone's like 22, they think they're like 35, So she was doing that, and then she was like, Ty, you should really like sit down during the scene, and I think it would be better. you know? And I was like, well, you're not really the director, you know? So, and you know, you haven't made a lot of movies, so we were getting caught up in that type of thing. And she was like alpha male. She was like, oh, this guy is so, and I was like, and she's so like that, you know? So we were doing that thing. And then the director was like, you know, and Barry Gordy, and they were like, listen, you know, I've worked with this and that, and you know, you got to really like take it easy with these kind of girls. They're kind of, you know, and you got kind of, and I was like,
I don't know. Yeah.
So you know, it was all like that, you know, until we started getting more cozy into the love scene and stuff like that. We mellowed out.
Right on. What did you guys do for the premiere? Because nowadays, like 2018, you know, they'd be fighting in the streets on their way to the theater or anything. Did you guys?
Yeah,
do
yeah. It
cool?
was very interesting because it's funny because I had I had experienced life in Europe and I experienced life in America, and in Europe they were more sophisticated when it came to race. They didn't have the same history as America had. Mm-hmm. So back then, the film companies weren't promoting to non-blacks. So it was like only to the black community, and there was no internet.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
And then people that were on the producing side of the movie were like, this movie, everybody's going to like it. It's not, it's like Star Wars. People like it. You don't have to be a certain race.
Right.
But they were being strange in the marketing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing that they had any type of, attention
mm-hmm.
was for the premiere. You know, like back in those days, they had the Charlie's Angels original, you know, so some of them showed up. The Diana Ross and, you know, there's a lot of celebrities showed up. But in the marketing of the film, there was none. So the movie went up to number 2 in the country with no real marketing, and then it dropped out, and then it didn't get seen by everybody in America until it started being religiously played on TV because they started getting some talk to show the movie, and they heard about the movie. So you know, so it was through the '90s really when HBO and different other TV stations was playing it religiously, and you know, and I was starting to get recognized more. I
was gonna say, what's life after that, as a 20-year-old like? Are you just
very difficult? Yeah. Very difficult. I grew up kind of, you know, my parents. It was very hostile, and there was, you know, it's a different time for my parents where they grew up, and they were very. They broke up when I was a kid. But they were very aggressive, you know. And there were a lot of beatings, and then dropped me off the babysitter, and the babysitter's beating the hell out of me, and I was a kid. So, you know, that type of environment you get used to, and then you grow up in a kind of a violent, and that wasn't my nature, you know. So it was confusing. So socially and dealing with Hollywood, there were a lot of sharks and a lot of, and you know not to kill them. Intellectually, you go, okay, this guy's screwing me over. I want to kill him, but I can't, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, so what do I do with this martial arts stuff? I can't kill this guy, you know. So it was difficult getting through because you know there is a lot of that stuff in Hollywood that as a young person you have to know how to navigate through, and really you don't have the capacity to. Unless you have someone, like for example, Beyonce, her family, and you know, kind of brought her into that world, and they were like the in the forefront, protecting her from all the junk,
right?
You know,
right?
You know, so if I didn't have that, so I went solo, and it was a lot of struggle. But I knew the basics about people. I wasn't into drugs. I wasn't into, you know, stupid sex parties and all this stupid stuff. I had tough times with relationships with women and didn't know how to navigate until I started growing and I was doing acting classes and I started doing self-discovery work and seminars and really getting myself more complete as a human being behaviorally and socially. And, you know, and then I just kind of hit a wall. My uncle died and another close relative died, and I was living in LA. And, you know, I was still kind of trying to navigate through this whole Hollywood thing. And then I came back to New York, and I started focusing on doing some theater. I was teaching martial arts, and doing some choreography here and there. And then I decided to start writing my own work, screenplays, and I wrote an autobiography last year and a half ago. And then I just said, let me start looking at creating these projects to get back out in the scene.
Yeah.
Because I felt I had a lot of the maturity to hit Hollywood and all the sharks.
Yeah.
Because the thing about all that, like you got the Me Too movement, that isn't just for females, that's for men too. Because in that scene where you have the haves,
Right.
producers, and then you have the people that are trying to get more work or some accomplishment in that industry,
Right.
or any industry.
do
The people that are higher up, they can tell that you need them. So you have to be willing to, like if you wrote on a piece of paper, okay, if I leave this job, where will I go? If you cannot answer that question,
Yeah.
then they can manipulate you.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to find a way to survive, either financially or emotionally, in another place that's healthy, rather than someone that's manipulating you.
Right.
So now, and also in business, if you got a deal, you're working with another business person. If you really know it's not the deal for you, you have to be able to walk out the door. That's like business 101.
Right.
Otherwise, they can manipulate you to do whatever they want you to do. So, that's the thing that you have to learn, and you have to have it with you. And a lot of times, people don't know how to make that decision because a lot of people are driven by the money. And if you're lacking within yourself in any way, then you think that the money is going to make you happy.
Right.
Even though you have a roof on your head, you got food on the table, you got friends, you think that more money is going to make you much more happy, and that's just not true.
Yeah.
So these are the ways sharks can manipulate you.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's sad when it happens.
It is what it is.
Does anybody have a question? Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah.
So what was it like working with Julius Carey? What was the on-set relationship on Last Dragon like with him?
It was pretty funny because he was a serious actor, and I was a new actor, and he was very in character all the time, like a WWE wrestler. And he would if this was the movie scene, he would have his guys go inside early before he came and mess with people. And of course, you knew they were acting, but I'd be like, oh, there they go. They acted. And then when Julius came in, I would start laughing. And then he would embarrass me. He would say things about me and everything.
Character offset.
Yeah.
Animosity going.
Yeah. But I knew he wasn't a real fighter. So one time he got me really upset, and I turned red, and I was, he got in my face like he was gonna beat me up. And then he ran. He just ran, and I chased him. And they were like, "No, Ty, he was an actor. He's just playing around." And it was funny. Yeah. because he wanted the tension. He knew on screen he wanted the tension, and as an actor, he knew that there needed to be tension. Sure. But I would be cracking up. He's very funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Bruce Lee or not, what is your favorite martial arts film?
Oh, there's a lot. Like I was telling you, I saw those movies in the movie theater. There's all the Bruce Lee movies, all the Sonny Chiba movies, and the Shaw Brothers, the samurai movies, Shogun's Assassins. There was so many that a lot of people haven't, it's not like Westerns, I think, that
Right.
you might easily be able to find, But I'd say the top ones are most of the Bruce Lee movies, some of Sonny Chiba movies. Sonny Chiba was Japanese. He did Street Fighter series, and then there was a Shogun's Assassin, and Five Deadly Venoms, which was a Shaw Brothers. Five Deadly Venoms was an amazing story, and then Mad Monkey Kung Fu. There's so many.
Yeah.
Thank you again for coming out and, gracing us with your presence, for this, the Q&A. I'm a film student in the city, and I do remember you in another interview talking about how much you do scripts and screenplays and things of that nature. How do you find the time to stay focused on a screenplay? Because that seems to be my hardest part when I'm writing. Everything is good until it's time to start putting pen to paper.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't like writing, but I did it out of wanting to create something, and it's just the discipline I put into that. Into martial arts, I put into that, and I have an actor's training, director's training that I put into writing. First act, second act, third act. Where's the conflict? Where's the story, the plot, and the resolution, and all that stuff. So I know the basics, and then I just allow myself to be freely get into the whole thing as an actor. So for example, if I write a character that's not close to me, I take it on as an actor. Well, how would that character be? And then I write from that place. But as an actor, I write the character. So, but for me, the approach, I already go in with an idea that is exciting to me, and you look at the overall what people really enjoy. My number one thing is that whatever I create, it has to identify with the average human being. So what's the identity is family, love, fun, hate, all the different things that people identify, with, survival, could be a number of things, but they're fundamental. So whatever characters I write, whatever story I write, I make sure there's fundamentals. I make sure that it's exciting from the beginning, to me, And from what people have told me, they get that in the beginning, and so if I was to write something like this, we're at Comic-Con, right? Well, let's just say it starts with not me, but let's say it's an actor, from the beginning, He walks in when he sits down, he cracks a joke. I would have the camera really close, and I would have this actor as a freak, and he's always on drugs. I up the stakes, but he's acting normal. But then all of a sudden he acts crazy, and the guy over here interviewing him is like, okay, and the people looking at him. So that's how people can identify with that right away because they know he's an actor, and then it's intense and the stakes are high. So I already start that way, and I let that keep it exciting for me. Okay. So if it's not exciting for you, how are you going to create anything good, Okay. So if, it's like going to the gym. If you're not used to going to the gym, you better get excited about it, otherwise it's not going to last. Right. Just get excited about it, Okay. Appreciate it. Find a way.
One last question. Yeah, go ahead.
What was the tone of the film from the perspective of the director and the actors when you were making it versus the final product? What was it, what you were going for? In particular, I see movies as a lot like a musical, and how important was the music when you were making it? Did the script really call?
Well, I was separate from a lot of that. I was a kid, and they wanted me to focus on the scenes. So the big, broader strokes of it, they didn't want me to get caught up in that. You know what I mean? I was like, first film, showing up as acting crazy. I'm butting heads a little bit with vanity, and so I was a kid, So it's not like he said, "Listen, what do we want to do with the music?" And that wasn't part of that. I just knew that there was a musical producer that was a music company, and he had all these great artists, and then you had the hit song, the DeBarges, To the Beat of the Rhythm of the Night, and they had the landscape of the music, but the tone was, 80s camp, but with this story, it was written as a martial arts comedy, but they had the romance and they had the like the Asian spiritual look inside the self, Leroy, all that stuff going on,
All right, guys. So that concludes our panel schedule. Let's thank the final guest of the weekend.
Thank you, guys. If you ever want to see, see what I'm up to, just go to Instagram. I am Taimak, IAMTAIMAK. It's great. I had a great time walking through and meeting everybody in Sacramento, smelling all the special smells across the street.
That's your end.
Thank you.
No problem, man. Give it up for him one more time.